So you're out in the woods, you've done a little bit of chopping, and you need to sharpen up your LT right machete. So you pull out the ViperSharp, of course. Stick around and I'll show you how to sharpen it. Of course, the first step in sharpening a machete in the woods is you gotta find yourself a solid surface. So let's go find ourselves a good solid surface. I think that'll do. And apparently the next step is to delete all of your film and start over. I thought I had everything downloaded from my phone, and apparently not. So the big one, the main one, got deleted. So we're not going to do this out in the woods. We're going to do it in-house in my little studio here. But we'll still show you how to sharpen a machete. So we'll get some oil on there. I'm starting with a 200 grit stone because this machete has been through some abuse since I sharpened it last out in the woods, and needs some more work on it here. So, all right. So first, we've got, well, let's back up here. First, we're going to get the Sharpie marker on the edge there, and I didn't go all the way up to the shoulder, but I've got the first half of the edge. It's most important that I'm concerned about, so we're going to do that. You'll notice I've got two clamps on here, and one of these I have set basically between this part of the blade acting as the heel and the tip of the blade, so trying to get that belly curve there. And then this clamp back here will do the majority of the blade edge there. So we'll put that in there. We will set this on to where we think we're hitting our angle, and then test a little bit. It's taking it off right at the edge, but it's not going along the rest of the blade, so we're going to take it down a bit until we are doing more of that. I feel pretty good about the majority of that. And right over here, I'm not at the same angle there. So let's check the next clamp and see what it covers. And see if it works at that same angle. And here I can see that it's not. It's a more steep angle. And so now I've got a choice. I can either move this clamp around to an angle that works, or until it fits this angle, or I can adjust the angle to be more steep and then match that steep. Now this looks like it's a pretty good consistent placement there, and so I kind of want to leave that alone and figure out how this is going to work. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move that clamp, and essentially what we need is we need a steeper angle. So my guess on that is if we move that clamp forward and put the knife deeper in the jaws of that clamp, that's probably going to do the job to get us a steeper angle. And so let's try that. I'm going to move it almost as far down as we can go. Yeah, and then get that clamp back on there as tight as we can get it. So I moved it closer in, and I've got so much weight out there now. And I'm getting real close here, but not so much out there. So that, I think, needs to go closer. So honestly, when you've got something this crazy, you just got to play with it a little bit. So we're going to back that up, and we're going to turn that this way. And you keep playing with it until you got the angle matching where you need it. We're definitely getting closer there, but we're missing this tip still, so we'll keep adjusting it. And I'm going to move it there, and I'm right back against the screw now. Aha! And there we are. Getting all the way to the edge. Oh, except for that very tip, which I can work with that. We can work that out. I'm going to have to work quite a bit anyway, removing a bunch of the metal just because of the chips that we have in this blade. So now I'm going to go ahead and really work it with this 250 grit. And there is going to be a little bit of a variance at the overlap right there. We can decide how much we want to be concerned about that later. Personally, I'm not terribly concerned about it. We're getting the majority of that right here. With this angle, we're getting to the edge. And hey, it's a machete. For most of us, it's not such a showpiece that we're going to be putting it on a wall somewhere. It's something that we're going to use, right? And so we're going to do this work until we feel like we're getting to the edge there. And I'm going to go ahead and we'll flip it over and try both sides. Here, I'm not going to try an apex, just one side. And that looks like it's doing pretty good at the tip on that part there. And we're getting to the edge all the way over here. And we've really got some divots, some nice deep chips in that tip of that machete right here. The forward of the belly. And that's going to take a lot of work. In order to work that out, you've got to take the metal back as far as the deepest chip you've got in the blade. So be careful not to be smashing your machete into rocks on the ground or stuff like that. If you're chopping up roots, you're going to chew up your machete because you're going to hit some rocks now and then. So just be aware of that. And so that's the other thing you've got to think about when you're sharpening. Do you just want to get it to where it's sharp enough that it's going to cut through the wood and the branches and the things that you cut, and not worry about those divots? Or do you want to do enough work to get those divots completely out of there? Don't forget to clean your blade as you're going. Remove all of that metal, because you're going to be creating a lot of those shavings as you go here doing this kind of work. So when you clean the blade, you might want to clean it until your rag, and you generally want to use a rag and not paper towel, but I'm using the paper towel here because it's white and that'll help you see how much is coming off. But you might want to do that until you're coming away clean or virtually clean. So see very little shavings coming off of that now. And so then I can go back to work, and it may not hurt to clean the blade off too, because it's full of shavings there. So we'll take that off. So then you got to decide how much you want to work. Do you want to take those divots out completely, or do you just want to get the majority of the blade sharp so it's going to cut through things? And you got to kind of decide where you want that sharpness. And if you were to do a paper cut test, you're going to see where those divots are for sure, because they'll catch on that paper. And you should be able to create a pretty good burr here. You can fill it right there, not so much back here, fill it right there. And so that tells me that we are not apexing yet along the entire blade. So we're going to have to continue to work to create that apex so that we're really getting sharp. When you've got a big blade like this, where you have the face of the edge itself is, you know, a good 1/8 to 1/4 inch, that's a pretty tough sharpening job, because you've got a lot of metal that has to come off. You're not just sharpening away just the edge. If you compare it to a smaller blade, for example, see something like that where I just got a teeny tiny little amount of edge, you're going to be able to sharpen that quick. It's not going to take long to get that sharp. But when we're dealing with the edge itself is that much space, we've got to take all of that metal off. So you're taking a whole lot more metal off in order to sharpen. Unless you go steeper and make a steeper angle altogether, which I'm already doing a secondary angle on this blade from what it originally had. And so it's just a matter of continuing to work until you get where you want it to be and what you're happy with. So we'll just keep sharpening. You also need to keep in mind that how much effort you have to put into it depends on the steel that you're working with and what kind of steel you have. If you're going to be sharpening machetes a lot of your time, or other really long blades, then you might think about getting a heavier base and do the 9-inch base instead of just the 6-inch base there. Give you a little more leverage to hold the blade in. And the way I use a machete, most of the work I do with it is this part of the blade. This back here isn't even being used most of the time. Not near as much. It's that belly and tip that gets most of the abuse. There we go. Getting a pretty good burr there. See if we can do that on the belly and tip here. Getting it there, not so much out there yet. And that's right where the blade gets chewed up most. It has some pretty hefty divots in there. Let's see if I can show you that on camera. You can see what I'm talking about. Yeah, you can really see where that's been chewed away pretty bad. That's where it gets the brunt of the work that it has to do. And that's where you're going to find yourself putting in most of your time when you're sharpening, is when you have a damaged blade that needs repair. When you have that much damage on a blade, you have to make a decision of how much work you want to do to repair it. And I'm honestly not going to go back that far on this. I'm not going to worry about it. If I've got the rest of that blade sharp, I'm happy. If I leave that little section there, I'm not concerned about it. And it might honestly be beneficial. I'm looking at the way things are going here. I could see it being beneficial to have 3 clamps on this. It's long enough. And we could put one there, one here, to get a better overlap there. Again, it just depends on how good a job you're worried about in the end. And I love this machete, and I love what it does for me. But all I'm concerned about is that it can chop. Alright, so let's do a little cut test. One of my favorite parts about having the ViperSharp is that you can pull it out of the system without losing your angle or anything. So the back of that blade is pretty good. You can see it, or feel it anyway, catching right there, right up there, and of course up in that tip. However, overall, that's pretty dang good for a machete. Now, if you want to, you can take it a step further and sharpen that up with a 400 or 600. Again, it's a machete. The work that it needs to do, I'm not going to worry about doing that too high. I might run a pass over it with the 600 stone a time or two, but I'm not going to try and polish this blade. That's not what it's for. I'll clean up those strokes a little bit, and then I'll call it good and put it back to work. And that's cutting pretty clean. I'm happy with it. That's how you sharpen a machete, using the ViperSharp.